Today, I'm going to show you 3 Japanese larches. But there's a catch. In fact, this catch doesn't just apply to Japanese larch. Simply put, each is in a different stage of development. And because of that, each has to be treated and pruned differently through summer. Because if you didn't, and you did treat them all the same, then you could seriously slow down the development of your prize bonsai. Just like I did with this Japanese cloud larch. More of that in a minute. So if you want to see exactly how to avoid making that mistake and how to truly appreciate the 3 stages of bonsai development, grow, build, ramify, then I'll keep watching. It's going to be fun. If I don't lose my voice first. Hi, it's Xavier, and welcome to my bonsai retreat, and welcome to the incredible Japanese Larch Mountain, one of 3 trees that I'm going to use to demonstrate the 3 simple objectives of bonsai design and development, and why it's important to know exactly whether your tree is at this stage, or indeed this stage, before you actually pick up these, because these can cause you an awful lot of harm, put these back a long way. But before we start on the first tree, which is all about a tree in early development, let's just have a look at the incredible growth this Japanese larch planting has actually put on in the last 3 months. It's incredible, and many of you'll notice I haven't actually pruned it at all this year. I'll tell you why in a minute. But that is looking very, very happy. In fact, the only thing we will do is move our Labrador, got no front legs, and put him safely to one side. So what am I talking about? Well, here you go. This is the first tree. This is a 3 to 4 year old Japanese larch, and this is a tree in early development. What am I trying to develop? Well, quite simply, that I want the trunk to be the thickness that I see really in my finished design. And why do I stress finished design? Well, simply because once you get to the point where you're moving to the latter stages of development, less and less energy is able to be directed towards the trunk thickening. In fact, I think I can show you this best on my Japanese cloud larch. I picked up this long contorted trunk back in 2015. That's 11 years ago. And I'm going to be honest with you, the trunk thickness hasn't changed that much. And if you notice, there really isn't a great deal of taper as we move up between the individual pads. And the reason that is because I was so keen to create this cloud structure that I concentrated all my energy on producing primary branches, secondary branches to create what is actually a really good foundation for the different clouds. But it came at the expense of being able to thicken the trunk. I can't go backwards. The only thing I could do is to put it into a growing bed and let the whole tree go wild, let everything grow out, lose all the work I've done really on creating this primary tertiary work in order to thicken that trunk. What I really should have done is identified what stage of development this was at. It was in stage 1. I should still have been concentrating on the trunk, let these grow out feet, to thicken that lower trunk and to control the vigor and energy distribution at the top. More of that in a minute with something a little smaller. But while we're looking at something small, have a look at this. Isn't that gorgeous? I don't have many jades or succulents, but this has got beautiful pink flowers and looks absolutely fantastic. Anyway, rather than looking at this wonderful specimen, let's go back and go through that principle in a bit more detail, shall we? So how do we achieve this? Well, it's recognizing that the only way those trunks are going to thicken is if the tree has the capacity to bring in as much energy as possible. In the case of larch, that's by having loads and loads of needles exposed and open to the sun. So the first thing you should be looking to do is identify a strong branch, a leader normally, that you can allow to let grow. 1, 2, 3, even 4 feet. As I've got one down the bottom of the garden. I'm doing that primarily because I need to thicken that trunk up more. And pretty well I ignore everything else. I will, where possible, avoid pruning pretty well any growth. In fact, the only thing I will prune is areas where we've got more than two coming from the same point. And the reason for that? Well, if you've watched many of my videos, you'll know. It's because what I want to avoid doing is creating some adverse swelling at key junctions. Hence, I'll keep to two, but I will let them continue to grow out. And there's one other thing we need to do as well. We need to maintain the vigor. We want these trees to be as healthy as possible. To do that, we need to make sure the light can get in there, that there's no sort of growth beneath that's getting covered and dying out. We need to make sure they're healthy, so there's no pests or aphids or anything that may slow down the tree's response. And indeed, we need to be fertilizing these. Fertilize, 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 let grow, let grow, let grow. That's my simple principle for the stage one of early development. Whether it's that size, which is 3 to 4 years old, or indeed that size, which is cuttings that were taken from that first tree. I think those cuttings are 2 years old. Now, when you first do your cuttings or your seedlings, it's actually better to keep them in something small like that while the roots establish. But there reaches a point, and for me, that's normally after 2 good healthy years of growth. I'll then get them individually into either a pond basket, or indeed, if I'm looking to really build a big trunk, I'll put them into a growing bed with a slate underneath to control the direction of the roots. And I think sometimes the biggest thing that a lot of us make as we're learning this hobby is managing our expectation. In early development, recognizing that the sooner we put something into a pot, the sooner we cut those roots right down, well, the sooner we're really telling the tree, you're only going to be this big, or you're only going to have a trunk that's this thick. And the reason why I'll say that is this is now 9 years old. I put this in a pot pretty well by year 2. Proportionately, it is growing. Proportionally, it is thickening in relation to all the different branches. But it's never ever going to grow a massive trunk now. Is that a bad thing? Well, no, it's not. I've got many trees like this. So what would you do with a tree that's in this stage? Well, simply, once you recognize that the tree has the thickness that you're going to want, the start of developing taper, well, the sacrifice branch has done all the hard work. You actually need to get rid of it now before it does some damage. We'll talk about that in a future video. Probably this will be the new apical region. I will cut just above it, like that. Though you may look to grow a leader on the central part of where your tree is growing, in terms of the way energy distribution happens, even at the early stage, we need to recognize that if we let everything grow out wild, then the actual thickness of the trunk, well, you could risk that you're putting energy into every part of the trunk and it's never ever going to taper. Now, you know that often we get taper by moving or selecting new branches which are already thinner to take over. We'll talk about that more in the second part of development. But there is nothing stopping you saying, I'm going to let the lower stuff continue to grow out. As we move further up, I actually don't want as much energy in this part of the trunk. So to actually resolve that, what I would do is just look at cutting the growing tips off. I won't necessarily go back to the point that I see as a branch, because remember, we're not building a bonsai, we're building a trunk. So having just gone around and controlled the apical growth, leaving the lower stuff as alone, I do need to do one very important thing, and this is something you don't just do in your early development, you do it all round your trees at all three stages of development to avoid a horrible problem. And that occurs when you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 all coming from the same point. Imagine you're going to get a great big knuckle forming. We don't want those. So it's extremely important at that early stage to remove anything that may indeed cause a knuckle to grow. And I've picked those two. That will be the continuation of the tree, and then this will be a little side branch. Do I want this long growth? No. So I'm actually going to clip it right back, just a couple of buds. Do I want this to continue growing? Definitely. So stage 1, the key thing to remember, you're building a trunk, not a bonsai. These are now moving to stage 2. But tell you what, should we look at another tree for that? Then stage 2, what we're looking to do, is to build or to grow the structure, i.e. the primary and secondary branches. When we talk about primary branches, that is the first branch that's coming off the trunk. In this case, that's a primary. The minute it subdivides and you get a branch coming off that one, like here, that is the secondary. They're the two things that are developing in a stage 2 tree. It's also probably the first time when you're happy with the thickness of the trunk that you could actually say, I'm going to put it in the pot that I quite like it in. This one, by the way, is known as the Marie Celeste as a result of a comment one of my early viewers put. So I've named it after you. And this is in a really, really interesting sort of scallop pot. Really love it. It's got a long way to go. But what it has already got is the trunk. I'm not going to be doing any thickening, so it is in stage 2 development. So what do I need to think about for stage 2? In essence, we need to now actually select where our primary branches are going to come from. That's the very first thing we do. So we've been growing this, and this is much smaller, and yeah, it's still in a plastic pot, so you don't need to put it in a bonsai pot. But now you can decide exactly where your tree is going to develop from. And this really is a case of personal preference. I know I don't want anything down in the trunk. I will remove that, follow it around. Do I want a lower branch there? Again, it's personal preference, but no, I don't. It's done all the job. It's thickened it to the thickness that I want. Will I necessarily want a branch coming out here? Again, personal preference, but no, I don't. So I've opened up the whole front of the tree here. And then we have a look and see where is the structure going to go from here. And this is the first time when you start looking at taper. Thick trunk starts to taper, although we've got a thick part here, which I really don't like. So already, I'm going to remove all of that. It's quite a big wound. I do need to make sure that's sealed so we can avoid it drying out and aid the healing process, because we want that to roll over. Now I know there's probably a few of you saying, bring back the other tree, that one's terrible. And yeah, it's not that great, but it's still the same example. We all have trees that have different beauty points, shall we say. And in fact, this is a perfect example of where actually I've gone from what I thought was going to be stage 2 back to stage 1. It can happen. I've removed a great big branch here because I want to start that tapering process, which is just as important. But because I've removed that, I'm recognizing that no longer is the priority to start building the secondary branches. A bigger priority now is to heal that wound. The only way I'm going to heal that wound is if I have loads and loads of sap flow going up through here. So I will continue to let this grow out, up and up and up. That will aid in healing. So I think that highlights a really important message. Just because your tree can be in stage 2 of the development, it doesn't mean that you can't go back to stage 1, or indeed have a tree that has branches are actually in different stages. You may have an apical region or something on the right hand side which is absolutely perfect. It's got its primary, it's got its secondary, and you're actually building those final twiggy branches. That's okay. Here you could still be in the secondary development where you're actually still trying to build a decent primary branch and secondary branch. Just remember, ask yourself, what stage is my tree at? Am I building the trunk, stage 1? Am I in stage 2, where I'm trying to build the structure? And then you ask yourself the question again when you look at your tree, which stage is that branch at? Now, when it comes to pruning your Japanese larch, you're often going to see you've got these really long branches that have grown out, then they themselves have got little shoots that are growing out. And, you know, your initial feeling might be, well, I'll only prune to here. So I've got all these lovely buds. Well, that actually is doing you a bit of a disservice, because if that's not the length you want your branch, what you're going to find is that the tree is then going to decide, probably the buds at the end, it will send the shoots out from and ignore everything close in. So you're going to have this long area where there's nothing. Now, if you're looking to build primary or secondary branches, you need to look at what we call that internodal distance, which is the distance between one bud or shoot, i.e. here, to the next one. You don't want that getting too long. So as you go along, you've got your primary structure, you've got your secondaries, and I would be looking and saying, right, that's the earliest bud I've got, That's the next one. So I'm actually going to cut to there. Look here, I've got a bud there and then a bud there, cut to there. And indeed, I'm looking at the outward part, I've got a bud there and a bud there. I would like to have 2 buds on either side when I'm building my secondary structure off my primaries. So we get that situation there. That means we're telling the tree, don't waste your energy on any other buds, just these ones. And if your tree is indeed healthy, then doing that is not dangerous at all. Your new shoots will come from those points. I say again, it is very, very unlikely, and never in my experience, will you get any new buds forming where there is nothing there already. I've never ever seen a Japanese larch back bud. So applying this principle to this tree here, I've got already my primary branches set up in place. So now what I'm going to do is cut back to what I believe are the closest new buds coming off those primaries. Applying that principle now to the tree, we'll take, say for example, these ones here. This here is, there's a primary branch here, which is following along up here. That's the little secondary. This is a secondary. This is a secondary. And off this, we want to form tertiary. That is the third set, which is going to be these buds here. So all I do is go back to probably the nearest set of buds. In this case, I've got buds there and there. So I'll cut back to those. Got a bud there and there. So I'll cut back to those. And then what you can see is I've got a very tight, compact structure, which is going to have, there's the secondary, 1, 2, 1, 2, and there's a little one off here. And again, if we look here, got 1, 2, so I'm going to cut that back there. That is going to be a tight branch, again, primary, secondary, secondary, and these little buds are going to be the tertiary, so that I can move it once they're grown into stage 3. Again, it is about perspective, and it is about what you enjoy or what you like in a tree. The second thing I talked about was energy distribution. It's probably key, absolutely key, when you're in this stage 2 development, because you still want more energy going to the lower part of the tree, where you expect your branches down here to be thicker than the ones at the apex. To make sure the energy goes that way, we definitely need to control what's going on up here. So at the top, I will literally go around and cut everything back to just 2 viable buds on whichever branches I'm seeing. I think the hardest thing sometimes people find to deal with is you've got this lovely big branch here and you're worried about cutting it too far back. But tell you what, let's get in closer and show you why you must. So this is the branch we're talking about. If you follow its length, it comes all the way and actually joins this primary branch here. So it counts as a secondary. So we don't expect there to be a lot of growth off it. This is the secondary. Now, we actually have to come a long way out before we've got lots of buds. Now, our first choice might be to say, well, we'll cut it there and we'll let it grow from there. But these will already conflict with this branch here. Actually, the true only one, we've got quite a big distance between that bud there and then the next one's along. This is tertiary structure. It should be close. That's our choice. Basically, leave it to just one bud. That will then produce a shoot this year, and hopefully what we'll do is then be able to get finer tertiary buds from that. And this is what we end up with, literally pulling everything back to just 2, maybe 3 of the closest buds to the primary branch that you're working on, keeping the apex very, very short. But you have noticed I've left this and this one, the growing tip, to continue. The reason why is this lower branch, which is the lowest on the tree, really should be the thickest. The only way I can do that is to treat that branch like it's, well, like it's almost in stage 1. I've got to thicken that. The only way I'm going to do that, is to let these shoots grow right out. Because unfortunately, it's not an ideal world. Branches develop at different rates depending actually on what the tree decides to put its energy into. And then finally, we hit stage 3. It isn't about growth anymore. It's about control. It's about refinement. So here we are. We finally reached it. Labrador Larch Mountain. This is made up of, originally, this tree and this tree were on the rock in their own right. These are now at that finished stage. All I need to do is refinement pruning. The 2 trees here, I actually added 2 years later. They've been on the rock for a while now. And reality, when I look into them, they've reached the primary and secondary development that I'm happy with. All I want to do is trim back to tertiary. So that pruning is going to be easy. And then we've got these 2 trees which are added to the back of the rock face. This one into the crevice, that's sitting in nicely. I've actually used a brace to actually keep it in tight. While that continues to expand, I need growth to continue to push out. So it's one of the reasons why I didn't do any pruning earlier in the year. I want more energy and more growth to expand into that crevice. On this second one, this is just about more roots. I want more roots to grow, but we've already got a nice firm pad here and upper one here. Probably the only thing I'm looking to do is add a little bit of wire to just perhaps bring that one up a little bit. I may end up cutting here. So even though we've actually got a variety of different ages of larches on this, all of them for this particular composition are in the refinement stage. Odd thing here or there, but basically I can treat them all exactly the same. Do you know what? This is when bonsai is nice and fun, because you don't need to think. You literally just need to go back to the 2 closest buds. So let's first of all have a look at one of these shoots just to remind ourselves of what the pruning opportunities are on a larch shoot. Now, it's not rocket science. I know we've all seen larch shoots before. They extend from one of these little buds here. You can see them all along the length. Out it'll extend, and it'll continue to extend until either the tree has decided to exert no more energy, or until indeed you either remove or cut the growing tip off. And that will then force the shoot to produce buds at any number of these different bud points that you see. And often it can be quite random, but if I let this one go, in another 4 weeks' time, I'd probably have 6 or 7 different shoots all competing for the energy. That can be useful, especially if you decide to wire and create different pad levels, which is one of the options you've got. Where you're looking to actually get really tight internodal distances, i.e. those buds really close and close to the point where the shoot actually started, then we need to be getting in close and looking exactly what each shoot's giving us. Because in effect, we've got 2 options when we're in the refinement stage. Bearing in mind that is where the shoot is leaving our secondary branch. This circle of needles all coming out in a wagon wheel, I call that the whorl, W-H-O-R-L. And first thing I'll tell you is right at the base there are 2 dormant buds. Remember that, because that's important. So we can easily see if we follow this up, there's the base. We have to go up probably 1, maybe 2 centimeters at the apex of the tree before we get 2 buds. The positioning of those buds is ideal actually, because we've got one here and then probably 2 millimeters further on a second bud here. That would be absolutely brilliant if we were a little bit lower down the tree where that internodal distance would be acceptable. So say if we look at this great big long shoot, again at the apical region of this tree here, again if I follow along, I've actually not got any buds until probably 2.5, maybe 3 centimeters. That's great if you're down the lower part of the tree, but hopeless for here. So I know that none of this is going to be useful. So let's cut that off now. This is where the shoot originated. That's the cartwheel of needles. And if you look here, there's a little bud there and a little bud there. At the base of every single one of those new shoots, you will have those 2 dormant buds. So if you don't get the bud spacing where you wanted, or the internodal distance is just too far, just cut back right to the base of that new shoot and leaving those 2 dormant buds to activate at the next cycle. I will often prune 3 times in a year. I'm not looking for growth. I'm not looking for anything more than those buds as close as possible to the origin of the shoot. If I don't get it, then there's only one option. Didn't get it here. I'm going to go all the way back to the wall and I'm going to ask the tree to have another go. Now, if I prune this in mid-May, then probably now, in another couple of weeks, I'd have had another opportunity to have a look and see if those shoots gave me anything. Often, this is just a waiting game. You will eventually get those 2 buds close in and at the right distance that suits the apical region of your tree you're developing. Oh, hang on a minute. Right here, about 3 millimeters from the base where the shoots come out, I've got 1, 2, a couple of millimeters apart. Absolutely fantastic. Mind you, I've cut 20 shoots where I haven't had anything I want. Yeah, be all right. Have a look and see what I get in 2 months' time. The other thing that you'll also be looking at here is potential wiring opportunities. Now, I won't wire at this time of the year. I will always wait until we've got to the late autumn when the needles have fallen. The tree is what I call in its safest state for doing wiring. And here's an example here. It actually comes from a branch underneath. And what I'd like to be able to do is to move this one down and then create some pads a lot lower down here. I'm not going to touch the shoot right now. I'm going to get a little bit of wire and I'm just going to attach it to the tree. You could also use a tag or a bit of tape or something. Gosh, my voice is going. And I'm just going to hang it there. That's going to remind me that that needs wiring later in the year. So there we go, and it's all pruned back. As you know, I've put wire here to indicate I want to wire that one down. If we move it round, I've also identified another place here where I am looking to bring this branch down and around. And equally, I think I found something at the back here. Again, later in the year, I want to bring that branch down and apply some wire. So basically, your 3 pruning techniques, whatever stage it has, the first one is you just prune to the buds that directionally you want to get shoots from. The second one is if you haven't got the buds in the right location or the internode distance between buds is too vast, take it all the way back to the wall and then activate those dormant buds that are always at the base. Or the third, look at it and think, can I put some wire on there, get some movement and actually create some good secondary structure and tertiary structure from that. That's your 3 choices. And the best thing about larch is that most times it'll give you 2 opportunities to do it in a year. But if you're really lucky, you'll get 3. This won't be the final pot, by the way. I know there's loads of you going, Xav, why haven't you put that on a slate or something like that? The reason why is I wanted to develop a nice root structure for the new trees that were added. Probably, maybe next year or the year after, I want to find myself a nice sort of slab where I can plant this on. But in the meantime, I can certainly use some camellia oil and just give this pot a little extra shine to make it pop when people come to the garden to see it. Oh, there's one other thing missing. Our Paulus Labrador needs to regain its position guarding these lovely trees. Love it. And probably a great time to say thanks to Lesley. I wish you all the luck with your eye recovery. She sent me a lovely little note just a few days ago. And also some nice sharp scissors. They are absolutely lethally sharp, which would be great for pruning down to some of those buds. And also 2 fun little feline figures to tease our legless Labrador. So should we just put them there? Isn't that lovely? Thanks very much, Lesley. So probably the biggest takeaway that comes from this is before you pick these up, ask yourself one simple question. What stage is my tree or branch at? Then the rest should be simple. It's just like a building, really. Stage 1, early development, foundation. Stage 2, secondary primary structure. Well, that's your framework. That's your walls and floors. And third, of course, is your refinement, that fine twigginess that really sets your bonsai. Well, that's pretty well the same as putting windows and carpets in your finished building. And of course, this applies to all species. Grow, build, refine, the 3 stages of bonsai development. So remember, don't treat all your bonsai exactly the same. And if you want to know more about bonsai fundamentals, there's a great video in there. Happy bonsai and God bless. Cheers.